It is June, which means we are officially in summer knitting season, and I would like to make at least one more summer knit this year. So far I've done this t-shirt. That was more of an accident because I ran out of yarn on the sleeves. I have done one scrap yarn cotton sweater that is really nice for summer, and I have 2 more summer tops on my needles right now. And I would like to add a third. So I did my favorite thing. I went to Ravelry and I sorted all of my favorite patterns into a bundle so I can share them with you in case you're also still looking for some inspiration. And I've specifically focused on 2026 releases this time, so all of the patterns are brand new. I've sorted them into 4 categories, so we have tops that have ribbing, we have tops with texture, we have some with a fun neckline, and some that just have a cool little detail that I liked. And I specifically made sure that they are suitable for everyday wear, just tops that are fun to knit, easy to style, and look really, really cool. So let's look at them. For the ribbing category, I actually struggled only selecting a few favorites because so many summer tops include ribbing. I'm assuming that's because most summer yarns aren't very stretchy, so if you're working with fibers like cotton or silk or linen or viscose, those don't have the same internal stretch that wool has. And if you're trying to get something that is comfortable to wear or maybe even form-fitting, ribbing is just a great way to achieve that with a yarn that is more suitable for hot temperatures. The first one that I came across here is called the Fernando Tank Sport by Wildman & Wool. There is an original Fernando Tank that was released last year, I believe, and that one has ribbing all over, while this one only has ribbing around the armholes and at the underarm. And I actually think this one looks really flattering because you get the stockinette panel in the front and then you get these vertical lines providing a little bit of stretch around the sides of your body. And what I also like about this is that it recommends a worsted weight yarn. I think most summer patterns recommend a bit of a thinner yarn, but the fun part here is that you can be done very quickly. So even if it's late summer and you're still looking for one very quick project to make, I think this would be a quick and engaging one to go to because you get a lot of variation while knitting one round. You get a really cool finished object, and also you'll be done a lot quicker than for most of the other summer tops. The Wedding Ribbed top by 𝗙𝗛𝗡𝗏 is one of those fingering weight options, so you'll definitely be knitting on that for a little bit longer. It is also a lot of ribbing, but I really enjoy this design because it creates very strong lines. It has the saddle section here, so you'll get the vertical lines going this way, and then you get lines going this way. And then you can also add a little bit of a sleeve apparently, so if you're clicking through the photos you can see that people chose different neckline options or different sleeve length options, which just gives you a lot of versatility within one pattern. I think this would be a great basic. It also seems like an amazing layering piece, so you can wear this in summer, but it seems like something that would be great to put under a blouse or a sweater in winter as well. And while I think this would take a while to knit up, I also think it would be worth the time because you can wear it year round. If you're looking for less of a basic and more of a statement, I would recommend the Textured Tee by Lisa Meissner. This top features different types of ribbing, so it looks very engaging to knit and also just very interesting to wear while being easy to style. Because you're only using one color, you can definitely find one that just goes with everything you already have in your closet and you still get an interesting piece to add to it. What I really like about this is the little hint of a sleeve that you have here. She's calling it a tee, but I feel like it's more of a top. It's not really a full sleeve. But I really like these tiny little sleeves that some of these tops have. I have a few more of them because I find they create a very flattering shape because it's extending the natural V shape of your body that points down to your waist upwards a little bit. So it goes up into the sleeves, and I just think that makes a very nice silhouette. This is knitted with a sport weight yarn, which is a good compromise I find between a fingering weight top that might drag on a while and something like a worsted weight top that would create a relatively thick fabric and also lose out on the amount of detail that you can include. I also wanted to include something a little more elegant looking, so I found the Freya top by Mathilde Royen. This top has thicker ribbed stripes and a wide neckline that falls off your shoulder. And I think this would be very suitable if you're invited to some kind of summer event, like a wedding, for example. This seems like a great option because you can really dress it up. And I also like that it has some positive ease that makes it easier to use a summer yarn that doesn't have any stretch to it. And it also allows for a little bit of a breeze to blow through if it's truly very hot. The only thing I'm not quite sure about is whether I would personally find it annoying to have the sleeves fall off my shoulders. I don't know if I could deal with that all day, but regardless, I think it looks really cool, and if you think that wouldn't bother you, I think this would be a really fun top to make. It seems pretty simple construction-wise, so maybe if you're not as experienced of a knitter yet, that would be a good option to go to. Also because it has some positive ease, I think it's way easier to choose a size that will fit you in the end because you have some leeway included, and if you don't quite choose the correct size or you're having some issues with the gauge, you can still get a finished object that fits you really well. And the last top I have for the ribbing category is called Snap P Top by My Knit Projects. And this has a bit of a unique texture because you're using a card grid rib stitch instead of a normal rib stitch. So that makes it look a little more interesting and gives it that rough texture. And what I also like about this pattern is that it is graded for 2 different fits. So you have all of the sizes, and then you have one fit that is graded with a women's sizing chart and one fit that is graded with a men's sizing chart. And that way you have a lot of options to achieve the perfect silhouette for yourself. For my texture category, I brought one top that looks almost like ribbing. It is called 𝗙𝗚𝗡𝗙𝗥𝗡𝗦 by Fibers Plus Pines, and you're achieving this texture by doing slip stitches. So despite it being a DK weight pattern, it might take a little while to knit up. I think it would maybe be more interesting than just working ribbing though, because you're always working ribbing when you're knitting, so this would just be a fun new stitch to try, I guess. And I also really like the finishings on this one. I think the finishings are ribbing, but they're very well integrated into the rest of the pattern, so the lines are always the same throughout the entire top. So the finishings are highlighted a tiny bit, but they're still very subtle, so I think that's a very fun detail to include here. Another unique design I found is called Cool Iceberg by 𝗙𝗛𝗡𝗏. This is a mostly stockinette fingering weight top, and you are incorporating these different patches of texture into it. I think it looks very flattering because these patches are following the shape of your body a bit. And I also like that you get optional waist shaping, so the pattern includes instructions for how to do it, but also how to not do it if you don't want to. And despite this being a simple design that is going to be very easy to wear in everyday life, you still get a really enjoyable and entertaining knitting experience with the mix of doing stockinette and doing this textured stitch. The My Dotline top by Norgard Knitters has a tiny bit of texture with these irregular stripes that are all over the top. I actually really like that they are irregular. I find that it's more interesting to look at than just regular stripes. I also really enjoy the neckline on this. I find these types of necklines very flattering in general, and I like that it's additionally highlighted here with the darker color. I'm not 100% sure how these stripes are created. I don't think it's just a purl stitch, at least when I zoom in on the picture it doesn't quite look like just a purl stitch, but I guess you will have to make the pattern to find out. I think this would be great to use up leftovers as well. Maybe if you ordered a ball of yarn too much for some other project you were making, it would be great to use as the stripe color here, and then you can just get some extra yarn to do the main color, background color of this top. So that's also always good to have a pattern in mind that you can do in case you have some yarn left over. I brought two patterns that include cables, which are usually more of a fall or a winter feature, but I think it's very interesting to include them in summer knitwear as well. I've actually never done a proper cable knit. I've only swatched in cables, so this is something I'm looking into. I would really like to do a cable knit soon, so if you're also looking for something you can try right now and you don't have to wait for the cold season, I would recommend one of these two. The first one is called 𝗙𝗛𝗡𝗏𝗡 by 𝗙𝗛𝗡, and it features a very striking, prominent cable down the front of the top. I think this top is part of a whole design series where there's also a t-shirt and a pullover, and I also believe this might be a good introduction into cables because you really only need to focus on a single one. I really like the little funnel neck that it has as well, that the cable extends into, even though I'm a little bit worried that it might be too warm for summer, at least for me. But maybe if you live in a bit of a colder climate or you're looking for something to make for late summer, this would be a very striking option. The second cable knit I brought is called Honey Tank by Brianna Mason, and this features a lot of smaller cables running all throughout the top. I still think you only really need to learn one cable stitch for that because it seems like it's always the same cable. It looks more summery than the previous one I showed, and it's almost making me a little bit sad that, in my mind at least, cables are such a fall or winter thing, because in summer I'm drawn to brighter colors, which would be amazing to let this cable texture shine. For a summer top, you don't really need to try and stay warm, so you can do a lot more interesting designs with the neckline of the top, and I found a few examples that I really enjoyed. The first one is called Shanghai Top by A Pirate's Daughter Travels, and this one has a lot of very unique and striking features. The most prominent one being this slit that goes over here from the neck. It also has a little bit of a collar and some lace going on the sleeves and on the hem of the body, so it seems like a pretty engaging knit. I'm not quite sure how comfortable it is to wear in the recommended yarn because it says this is designed for the knitting fall of pure silk, which is not very stretchy and also a little bit rough, I find. So I don't know how comfortable a tight-fitting top is in that yarn, but regardless, you could use whatever else you wanted. My next two tops are also kind of similar in that they both feature this keyhole neckline detail. The first one is called Cordova Top by Alma Patterns, and this one actually seems to be reversible, at least in the sample pictures. She has the keyhole part once in the front and once in the back, and I think it looks very nice both ways. However, it does mean that you can't really add back shaping to a top like that if you're wanting to turn it around. I think it should be fine for this top because even if you turn it to have the keyhole in the back, it still looks like you have enough space up here so it doesn't become uncomfortable and the top isn't choking you here. Again, it has these little sleeves that create the V shape that I think look really nice, and you're basically getting two tops for the work of one. The second top is called Kylix Top by Hannah Said, And while it looks very similar, it is created very differently, funnily enough. So you still have this type of V shape, still have a pretty tight fitting top, you still have this neckline detail, but this is created with some kind of ribbed stitch, at least it says that in the text. I don't really find that it looks like defined one-by-one ribbing, so I'm not quite sure what exactly the stitch is that you're doing. Maybe the fabric just looks like that because of the yarn that was used here, and it is actually one-by-one ribbing, I'm not quite sure. Regardless, what I find really cool about this is the way that the sleeves are created, because it seems like you're just casting on a very wide panel up here and then you're doing decreases this way. So you don't have any seams for the sleeves, which I find accentuates that V shape I was talking about even more. The last top that I brought for my neckline category is called Wrap Top by Alma Patterns. This has more of a bralette type neckline, I would say. So you're knitting two panels that cross over one another at the bust, and then the rest of the body is just knitted straight down, I guess. I really like about this how it also has the little sleeves, but the slope of the neckline follows that slope of the sleeve as well. So you have these two lines here that run parallel to each other. I think that looks very flattering. And it also seems like you have a more engaging upper part to knit, where you're creating these two panels and the little sleeves, and then you have this little bit of body left that seems pretty quick and easy. Lastly, I have a few patterns that didn't really fit into any category, but have a small fun detail that I thought was noteworthy. The first one is called 𝗙𝗛𝗧𝗧𝗘𝗥𝗦 by Sandrine C. This is a mostly stockinette fingering weight top that has a little detail around the hem where the top flares out a little bit. And I think that looks very nice because it again accentuates the shape of your body, because it's going outwards as your waist is going outwards, and it's following that baby doll trend that we've had going on for the last few months, I guess. Also, I think this would still be pretty fun to knit, because obviously if you have a part of your top that is flaring out like that, you're gonna have to add quite a lot of stitches there, and if that part is very large, I think it can become kind of annoying after a while to work all of these stitches, but since this is just such a tiny piece of the top, I think that would be fine to do, and this is still very easy to style, very basic top that just has this cool little baby doll hem. For the second top, I brought a little bit of color work. This is the Paris Polka Top by Wool No. 1, and it features these circles around the neckline and the hem of the top. I actually think up here they look a little bit like a necklace, which is really fun, and in the colorway it reminds me of plums a bit. I don't know why, but that was my first association, and it just looks very summery, very fun to do. I also like that it includes circles. That's not something I see a lot in knitwear, because when you're knitting a stitch it's rectangular, so it's kind of difficult to create a shape like a circle, but I think the designer did a pretty good job with that. This is also for an Aran weight yarn, so also a very quick knit. The only thing I'm not quite sure about is the yarn recommendation, because it seems a bit warm to me for a summer top, at least one that I would wear. The recommended yarn is Drops Air, and you're holding that with an alpaca silk. And I've worked with Drops Air before. I've used it for winter sweaters and hats and stuff like that. So I think for me that would be a bit too warm, even though I really like the halo that it gives. I think it's nice that it has this little bit of fluff. But if I were to make this, I would probably look for a different yarn that is a bit more suitable for warm weather. Since we're already doing color, I selected something with stripes. This is the Isolde top by 𝗙𝗛𝗏, and this is a basic striped top that has a unique hem shape. It reminds me a bit of the corsets that have been trending for the last few years. I think that looks very flattering, the way it like hugs your body there. And what I like about this is that you can get that type of corset shape without losing any of the wearability, because if you own any of those corset tops, I have two I believe, they can get quite warm and they're very tight and they're not super comfortable with all of the plastic inside and ties going on. So I think this would be a great knitted option. The designer has a few samples, and there's one that is a bit tighter fitting than the other ones, and I actually like that one the best because it gives the most corset-like look, but also all of the other samples are really cool. I think the colors are really fun, and it just seems like a good basic to have while still keeping one cool unique feature. Another cool design I found is called Inca Top by Ira Berg. This is just a plain stockinette top that has two side slits that you can close with a tie. And what I think is nice about this is that it does have the side slit feature that has been popular in knitwear, but it's still wearable for all kinds of occasions because the side slit doesn't go all the way up, it's just a tiny piece down at the hem, and it's still enough to maybe get a little bit of a breeze blowing through. I also really enjoy the neckline on this. A lot of the tops that I've shown today, or just a lot of summer tops in general, don't really have finishings, I guess because they're always adding a little bit of bulk and warmth, and they take away from the effortless summery look of them, but I do enjoy the double knit neckline on this one. I think that it makes the top look a little bit more polished than some of the other options, and I think that's very pretty. And the last top I want to share today is called Petalin Top by Anna-Larina Riedel, and this is probably the most store-bought looking top of all of the ones I've shown today. It is a classic camisole, I would say, with some petal details around the armholes and around the neckline. And I think that's a very cute detail to add to an otherwise very basic top. I also think that this would make a great layering piece. So in winter, if you're maybe wearing something that can show the neckline of this top, I think that would also look absolutely great. So while this might take a while to knit up with fingering weight and with all of the finishings that you're doing on it, I think it would be worth it because you can get way out of it in the summer, but also as a layering piece later in the year. That was all of the tops that I've brought today. I hope you could find something that you enjoyed. I hope you found some inspiration. I definitely did. I have some of my favorites picked out that I maybe want to cast on. And if you have any more suggestions, any of your favorites, this year's releases, or your all-time favorites from the years before that, I would love to know that in the comments, and I will see you next time.